what could be possible for you, what makes you feel fully alive, and just what would you love to create? Like those questions, the power of the questions that we ask ourselves are directly related to the quality of the life that we can create for ourselves. So, what questions are you asking yourself?
The Tom Screen podcast is owned and made possible by Ethical Marketing Service. If your business is struggling with Google or Facebook ads, maybe you're frustrated figuring it out or there's a performance issue, Ethical Marketing Service has worked on hundreds of accounts and we can help in this area. We offer a 30-day money-back guarantee. If you would like to find out if we can help, it's a free, no salesy consultation call and the link is in the description. Enjoy the episode. Thomas Green here with Ethical Marketing Service. On the episode today, we have David Weaver. David, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It is my pleasure. Would you like to take a moment and tell the audience a bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. Like I said, yeah, so my name is David. I've been married for 16 years, actually last week. I have two little girls. They're 7 and 10. And I own my own company. It's called Unbroken Pursuit, and I do high performance executive coaching for business owners.
Thank you for the introduction.
Yeah.
We both briefly spoke before we recorded and mentioned the topic of potentially combining your story and your expertise. So would you like to start with a little bit about your story?
When I was a kid, I was just like obsessed with music. My mom taught me how to play the piano when I was like 6 years old. And then from there, it was just an obsession where I was always thinking about it. I was in jazz band and we had a couple of seniors when I was a sophomore. We had a couple of seniors who were like incredible. They were like way, way better than me, like amazing musicians, went on to go like get top spots in their colleges of their choice. Um, but from that, we won some really cool contests. I don't know if you've heard of the band Big Bad Voodoo Daddy. Have you heard of them before?
I haven't, sorry.
They're that's all good. They're like a swing band. If you're not into that kind of music, you wouldn't have heard of them anyways. They're a pretty big like swing band back then. Actually don't know if they're still doing stuff, but they put out a contest to the whole country. They're like, all right, any high school in the country record a cover of one of our songs, and if you win, we'll come play a concert with you. And we won that. And so they came out and to our school, and we had like 500 people show up for this concert at our gymnasium, and we got to play with these guys. It was like so cool. And then from that, we entered another contest called the Duke Ellington Festival, which was they take the top 10 bands in the country, and you get to go to New York and play at Lincoln Center. And we got in the top 10 for that too. And then the money we made from the Big Bad Voodoo Dad concert paid for us to go there. It was super cool. And like, I didn't grow up, we didn't have a lot of money. So the fact that we were able to like make all that happen and have these like incredible opportunities was just a very cool. I'm super grateful for all those experiences, and of course like the friendships that you make during that process too. So that's kind of how my story starts. And then yeah, where would you like to go from there? I could just keep talking forever, but
Well, in any good story arc, it kind of, I mean, your story has started off quite positively so far. I'm kind of like happy with the way things are going.
yeah,
Typically, the hero, this is you in this case, faces some adversity. Did you ever find any of that?
for sure. So um after high school, I was also like in a rock band, and we were playing and doing stuff. And the plan was always like, all right, I'm going to be a professional musician. And then all of my friends and I who played music together, we started getting married. We bought condos or houses or whatever. And I was the drummer in the rock band. So having a condo and being a drummer doesn't work. You can't play drums in a condo without like, alienating all your neighbors or getting the cops called on you. Um, and so we just kind of, it wasn't like, hey, we're done doing this thing. It just kind of fizzled out and just sort of disappeared. Everybody was like, got their, careers. And like I said, was getting married and everything. And during that time, I was trying to figure out like, okay, well, what do I want to do professionally? And I had a job in IT, and it was a good job. I just knew somebody and I got in there and it was great, but I was super bored. I did not care about the work whatsoever. Um, and so I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do the whole time, and I was like exploring all these options. I was like, oh, maybe I'll be a firefighter, and I went and did the tests for that and did really well, and still didn't get an interview because you like have to know somebody to get in the fire departments. And then I was like, oh, maybe I'll go in the military and be in special forces, and I went and took the tests for that stuff and passed all that. But then they were like, well, here's how much you make, and I was like, well, I can't even pay my bills with that, so no. And I didn't do that. And then, just trying to figure out like, what do I want to do with my life? And because I watched my dad work in corporate America and work very hard and provide for us, but also like not be fulfilled or happy in the work for, most of his life. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do something that felt fulfilling for me and also felt like it mattered and it was something worth doing. So I ended up landing in the health and fitness world. Went back to school, got a whole bunch of certifications, and then went and got a job at a local fitness club. And I didn't like it at all because they had all these rules. They were like, you can't do this. You need to make sure all them they do that. I'm like, well, what if that's not in the best interest of the client and what they need? That they didn't care. They just want to make money.
Just a
So
brief side note. I don't want to
yeah.
interrupt your flow or anything, but is that a big lesson that you would share with others in the sense that you went back to school, got certifications, only to find that you didn't like the job that you were training to do?
Yeah, but I think the what I didn't like about it though was the like corporate structure of it. So um yeah, because right, there's so many people who go to school and they get their degree or do whatever, and then they're like, well, I don't want to do that. Um but I think there's a lot of value though in the exploration. So I I I think, and I call it like the pursuit, like trying to figure out like what your path is, and even if it's not that one, it's not necessarily wasted. I think it's still valuable to go explore and find out, because the alternative is that you just settle. And like I could have stayed in that IT job probably for my whole career and been made money and been fine, but like super unhappy. And so even if the going through the health and fitness stuff didn't pay out, I still think it would have been worth exploring to find out. Because I think that's for me, that's even worse to not try to find out. Because that feels like just settling, and then I would have regrets about that.
So what happens next?
We ended up going to this now like super infamous summit down in Austin, Texas, called the Black Box Summit, and it was all of these amazing coaches. And we were thinking, so I was like, I don't want to do this corporate thing, but what if we did our own thing? Learned from all these amazing coaches, and that was kind of the I think the last step before we're like, okay, we're gonna do this thing. And it ended up, there's a lot of drama. You could Google that if you want. That happened at that summit, but it was one of those moments where it changed. I can point to that moment as like that changed the course of my life for a decade, for sure, because I met my coach that I hired and learned all this so much stuff from. He worked with him for a large number of years, which in turn allowed me to help a large number of people. We asked two of our friends if we could train them for free, like not even charge, like, hey, we just want to start practicing and like doing this thing. They got super good results. They started telling people, and that was an 8-year journey of like getting our first commercial space. And this whole time I was still working at this IT company, but I was like, right, exploring and trying to figure out what I really want to do. And I can still remember like signing that first lease, and it was like not very much money at all, but it was so scary because we'd never done that before. And and it was this tiny, it was like a room and a bathroom. That's it. And but that was really cool. That was the birthplace of our company, and we ran that for a long time. We moved into 3 different commercial spaces. We ended up having like a massage therapist in house, a kids room, and offices, and we would hold weekend seminars and stuff. And it was a good time for a long while until it wasn't. And that was it was really hard because once I had that dream, like that was the dream. That was like, this is what I want to do. And when it got to the end of that, and this question that I always ask myself and I ask my clients still all the time today is like, well, what makes you feel fully alive? Do you want to do this version of coaching for another 10 years? And when I realized the answer was no to that, it was really tough because it was like the death of a dream. And I hadn't experienced that before. That was like a new thing. And so it was a really challenging time to figure out what to do kind of during that. And so then how music kind of dovetails back into this is like somewhere in the later part of running the gym, I had this realization like, oh, wait a second. I stopped playing music for 8 years. It was a long time, like nothing, no, just like all I did was only listen to music. That's it. No playing of any instruments. And I was like really angry with myself at first. And then once I got over that, I got super inspired, and it was like one of the greatest times of my life because I couldn't stop writing music. And so for me, like playing music is awesome, but writing music is like maybe the most in flow thing that I can do, where I'm just like 100% focused, like hours of time just disappear and I don't even know where they went. And so I just was so inspired. I started writing songs like left and right, and ended up then doing something that was a childhood dream, which was to write my own album. And I recorded and wrote an album, and like got some friends together to play on it because I don't play guitar. So I got a friend who's like an amazing guitar player and played on it. And then so I wrote this whole album in kind of this death of a dream. This was kind of, going down, and this was this new thing. And it was like also a childhood dream, and it all kind of accumulated at the same time. And so it was an interesting mixture of like sadness, but also like crazy inspiration, and then, making something that I had always wanted to do.
Picking up on that, you said that it was great until it wasn't anymore. What was it that happened?
I think there is like it's a gradual thing where you spend so much time and energy in like working to create expertise in something. And I don't know if you've had this experience, but like after you did it for a decade, I just wasn't that excited about it anymore. There was like, like I don't care to this day. I don't care if I never teach somebody how to squat ever again. Like that's fine. Don't need to. It'll be cool. So I was trying to figure out what do I like about coaching? And the thing that I really love about coaching is real conversations. When people come in and they're like, "Hey, this is what's going on in my life. This is how fitness has helped change that," or whatever. Like that part of it, I still really loved. But when I was asking myself, do I want to do this for another 10 years? The answer was no. And that was tough.
Well,
So,
it is, I understand. I've been in the same position.
okay.
It's better, I would say, to know and to be looking than it is to, I don't know, not have that realization. Some people don't like what they do and just continue with it for year on year, but at least you know at that point. So what,
Yeah.
and presumably you're looking, what kind of happened? Do you have to try anything else, or what happens next?
So there's 2 versions of the story, and they're both true, but I'll give you the more interesting one today, which I haven't really like shared publicly on like a podcast forum, but I'm fine with with it. So what happened is crazy actually. I got a call one day. I was like sitting in my office, and the state of Washington called me up. So for non-American listeners, we have like all of our states, and they all have their own rules. They all have their own set of laws within then the like whole conglomerate of things. And some of them are ridiculous. And so what happened is they called me up one day, and this gal was like, "Hey, are you David? This is your company? Yes. Is this what you do? Yes." She's like, "Okay, you classified your business incorrectly." I was like, "What are you talking about?" She's like, "Yeah, you're retail." I'm like, "No, no, we're a service business. Like we work with people. We have services. Like we sell some retail products, and we pay sales tax on that stuff and whatever." And she's like, "No, your whole company is a retail business." I'm like, "I'm gonna have to call you back. What are you talking about? Like, this makes no sense to me." So I hang up the phone and I call my accountant and I talk to my accountant and I go online and I do my research and come to find out that the state of Washington had changed the law and classifications for our business. So like not only us, but like yoga studios, martial arts studios, like anybody in that sort of category, they had changed the law so that they could collect sales tax on our gross revenue instead of us being service oriented businesses. So I went back and talked to her and I was like, "Okay, like, so what's the forward plan?" Thinking like, they're just going to say, "Okay, like moving forward, you need to change it. And like, we'll go from here." But no, they wanted 2 years of back taxes on our gross revenue, which in the state of Washington is like 10%. It's a huge amount of money. Like there was no way that we could pay that. There was not a more difficult time of life that we've gone through, because now it was like, yeah, I'm not sure what the future looks like, but not only that, I'm about to lose what I currently have and like what I worked so hard to build. Because there is not really much of an option. The only option that we had was to actually close the business so that we didn't have to pay that exorbitant amount of money. And like, looking back, probably should have hired some lawyers and like, gone down that road, but that just wasn't like on our radar or how we thought about things. And we ended up having to break our lease. We got sued. It was insane. Like stuff that I never would have imagined in my life would have happened. I remember just like sitting in my office, like staring at the wall, like just staring off into nowhere. Like, what am I gonna do? Like, I have a little girl. Like, how am I gonna provide for my family? I don't know what to do. And so what did we end up doing? We ended up closing the gym, doing everything, we did end up hiring a lawyer to take care of some stuff. They did a full investigation because they thought we were lying. They were like, "Oh, you've been collecting it and just not giving it to us this whole time." And we're like, "No, we're not. Like, we don't have it." So they did a full investigation on like, all of our bank accounts and everything. And then, once they figured out we weren't lying, they're like, "Okay, I don't know." We ended up settling for some smaller amount, but it still was like, not easy for us to do at the time because we were just not in a good spot. So closed that, ended up, my wife got a job. She as a server at a restaurant. I kept a handful of my clients remotely, but I had to work for somebody else. So I asked my friend if I could be an employee for him. And so he hired me on as a W-2 employee. And so I could keep a handful of my clients remotely. And then I got another job working as a milkman in the morning. And because my brother-in-law was the accountant for that. And so he hooked me up. And that that was a tough job because it's my start time, and some of these guys start crazy, but my start time was 3:45 a.m. And you work until you're done. It's technically like a 4:10 sort of shift, but it's crazy hours. When you start, you don't have your own route. You're just covering for other people. So you have different start times, different locations, and you don't know any of the stops at all. You're just like following the directions. And if the person left good directions, then it's easier. And if they didn't, it sucks. But it was one of the hardest times of our life by far. I would get up early in the morning, work that. I'd come home, I'd see my wife for maybe an hour or two. She'd go to work. And then I'd have like my online clients. We worked 3 jobs, barely saw each other for 2.5 years, something like that. But and then the whole time going like, what am I going to do? We can't do this forever. Like this is not sustainable. But we set ourselves up. We paid off all of our debt. We built up a huge savings account. And during that difficult time, one of my clients that I still had, she said, "Hey, you should go take this class. It's on business coaching. I think you would like it. I think you'd be good at it." And she was a successful business person. And I was like, all right, cool. I'll go check it out. I'll go do it. So I did. And that was really that was the light bulb moment for me of here's where I could go next. Here's how I can utilize a lot of my skills that I already have and learn a bunch more new things and expand my skill set. Still be able to help people, still do work that feels really fulfilling for me, and create a new life, a new business. And so that's exactly what I did. Jumped in both feet, hired my own coaches, and eventually then put in my notice and quit working as a milkman, and then jumped into this world of what I do now. And it has evolved from what it started, what I thought it was going to be, to what I am actually doing now, quite a bit. But looking back, I couldn't be more grateful that it led to now, because every life is so good now. It's so good. I have like the best work-life balance of all time. I get to see my kids grow up. I spend tons of time with them. They like have such a skewed reality. They're like, "Oh, Dad, don't go to work." I'm like, "I'll see you in like 45 minutes when I come refresh my coffee." you know, and I couldn't be more grateful. But going through it was really, really hard. And yeah, it was not fun at all. And it took me a long time to adjust when I quit, and we were like went from working 3 jobs to like just doing one, and like building this new business. I didn't know what to do with myself. It was like so much I had so much time. I was like, what do I do? It's like it's okay to just chill, just relax, you know?
Yeah,
So
kind of like an emotional adjustment you have to make. You're no longer in like fight or flight mode. Does that sound about right?
yeah, for sure. And it took it took months to calm down, to not feel like I should be doing something every second, you know?
You mentioned the milkman job. Presumably that's because one moment you have a successful business and the next moment you no longer have an income. Is that about
Yeah,
right?
yeah, totally.
And any advice for someone who is currently, well, about to or going through that right now? Have you got any generalized advice that you could share with someone who has a business which is closing down as we speak?
Um, Man, yeah, I think even if it feels like it is the hardest thing ever, there is possibility within that. It's like, because if you've created a business once, you can create a business again, if that's the route you want to go. And for me, honestly, like the first 6 months to a year of having that milkman job, I needed that. I needed to not care about trying to get new clients. I needed to not care about my business, running a business side of things. I needed to just wake up and go do something and then go home. And like zero, like when I wasn't there, I was not thinking about that job, because you didn't have to. Or when you're a business owner, you're kind of always thinking about things, right? It's part of being an entrepreneur. And so I guess if I had any advice, it might be like allow yourself to have that time and space that you need to decompress and create some space from all of that. And then the creativity, allow the creativity to come back of like, well, what could be next? One of the biggest questions that I ask all of my clients now is, what would you love to create? And when you ask it from that energy and that space, it's totally different than like, what should I do next? There's a lot of obligation or like outside pressure that can come from that question of like, well, what do other people think I should do? But if you say, what would I love to create? That's a completely different question. And so I think just giving yourself that time to kind of go through that process of, stepping away and creating some space, and then having the mental energy to be able to think about creatively, like, what would I love to create? I think there does, for me, I needed that space. So being okay with that and allowing that to happen.
And when you're leaving that job, what are the feelings that you're going through there? What's anything to share?
Leaving the milkman job, going back to entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nervous. Definitely nervous, and excited. And, you know, there's some level of like, can I do this again? But then there's also that level of like, I've done this before. I can do this again. So you have that confidence of like, this is the second time. This is not the first time of creating a business. And so I think it was a mix of a lot of stuff, but also it was, you know, yeah, all right, here we go. Like, can I do this? And I remember actually I looked back in my writing and my journaling of just being super grateful for the opportunity to have that time and space and create something new again.
And I think you said it was a friend who got you to go to, was it like a course for business coaching? Are you still in touch with that person? Are they aware what you've built since you got introduced to that?
Yeah. Yeah. And so the moment that I mentioned earlier where I met my coach like way back in Austin, Texas, her telling me, "Hey, you should go do this course." Those moments are equal in my mind of like life-changing that direction. If I hadn't said yes to that, I have no idea where I'd be today, and probably not sitting here talking to you, like enjoying life, creating my own schedule, traveling around, hanging out with my kids, like helping people. I have no idea where I'd be. And so I've expressed many times to her how grateful I am for her to, just recommending that.
Well, I suppose just one more follow up on the on what we've covered so far. Let's say you're a person who has just gotten that call from the government, and I suppose it wouldn't be that specific, but it's certainly something that I've heard before about that surprise bill. Like, oh, by the way, you owe us, 20-30% of your yearly revenue, and there's nothing in the bank to cover it. Any thoughts on, not necessarily tactical, but strategies or thoughts about how you deal with that instance?
Yeah. So, well, part of the work that I do now is that I think that perception is everything, and how we look at everything is, and it's completely up to us. We can decide, like, circumstances have no meaning until we give them meaning. But when something like that happens, I don't think that we should downplay it either and say like, oh, I'm just going to look at it differently. I think there's real, there can be some real emotion that comes with that, and just being okay with that, like being okay with that. But then now what? Like what are you going to do with that? Are you going to, I don't, I mean, obviously it depends on the circumstance and what you're going to do, but every time things like this happen, there are opportunities to learn. And I feel like we learned a whole bunch of financial lessons during that time. Like, not the easy way, the hard way, a whole bunch of them. But now, we make different decisions. I make completely different decisions about that kind of stuff. Like, there's not, there's always money getting set aside. There's always backup. There's always and then that allows you to make different decisions and go through it. So I think anytime we go through something challenging, if we allow ourselves to be the victim of that situation, then there's no opportunity for growth. But if we allow ourselves to see it as a learning opportunity, then we're going to continue to evolve and grow and get better as a person and be able to handle things better over time. Because that's just how it works in psychology.
So even if you can't see the benefit to that particular instance, it will come eventually, providing you're willing to learn from it.
Yeah, for sure. I could not see any benefits during that time. And like, if you asked me to go through it again, I'd have a hard time saying yes. But, there's always positives and negatives to everything. And we often just like choose to see only one side of it. And one of my favorite teachers is Dr. Demartini, and he talks about how like we all have positive and negative traits. There's always positive and negatives to everything, and it's all just a feedback system to get us to be authentic and to learn what we need to learn. It's interesting, like if I don't know for you, but I can look back and see like life will keep teaching us the lessons that we need until we actually learn them. and like that was just the final like straw on the financial lesson for us. Like, all right, we're not going to learn this lesson anymore. We're going to make different decisions moving forward. But I think there's always opportunities to, hopefully make less mistakes. And even though that one too is like sort of an outside circumstance, but there's stuff that I could have done, right? I could have been more proactive about like staying on top of when are things changing. Like, let's look into these things and relying on, other experts to help make sure that we aren't making mistakes, like that kind of thing. And so even though it can feel terribly like somebody did something to you in the moment, there's still opportunity to see both sides, see the positives and the negatives of it, and not make either of them wrong. It's easy to make feeling bad or sad or mad wrong, but in my personal opinion, and like in working with people all the time, those negative emotions are not wrong. They just are, and when we try to squash them down, it actually makes things worse.
And you're staying on top of the coaching business tax changes.
Yeah, right. That's right. Yeah. So far, there's not retail. Yeah.
I always like to talk about limiting beliefs in, if that's an area of expertise. I always enjoy that conversation.
Yeah.
So I'd like to know your thoughts on that. At the same time, my interpretation of your story, what we've covered so far, I got no impression of limiting beliefs. It was kind of like, testing out the various different things you might want to do with your life, but it didn't translate to me that you really had any in relation to deciding what you want to do with your life. So first of all, like the thoughts on limiting beliefs that run the show, in your words, and then maybe if you've had any in your story.
Most of the people that I work with have a laundry list of limiting beliefs, and it's directly impacting how the world create their success or not success, and their general overall fulfillment and happiness levels. And so if you have a bunch of limiting beliefs, they're making life not nearly as enjoyable as it could be, right? And so yeah, ask me whatever else you want about limiting. We can go in any number of directions with that, but limiting beliefs are a huge part of most people's psychology that I talk to.
Well, of the shall we say the clients that you have worked with, or perhaps your impression of them, what tend to be the most common limiting beliefs you come across?
The most common limiting beliefs are just like those ones where they're beating themselves up about things like a lot. Like, oh, I'm not actually good in this category. I'm not good enough. I'm not, I can't do that. I'm not the best person for that. And there's just a lot of it too. Most of the time they come from some sort of childhood thing. And so I've had conversations with people where when I ask them a question, they can't even get there. They can't even understand because they've had these limiting beliefs for so long that we have to talk about those first and then take the time to peel that back. And one of the biggest things that I help people with is like learning how to actually love yourself. And I know that's like kind of a weird thing to say, but it's really hard to have great relationships. It's really hard to feel like you deserve to make good money from your business. It's really hard to feel like, you know, you're not a failure if you're constantly putting yourself down and you're constantly beating yourself up. And so that going back to that whole like DeMartini thing, if you like continue to depreciate your own worth and your own value, you're not being authentic, you're not loving yourself well. And then so there's other things that are showing up and not happening in your life because of that, because you're allowing yourself to stay like in this box. No, like simple things like, oh, if I lose 20 pounds, then I'll be skinny, and skinny people aren't very nice. It can be stuff like that. And so I'm going to self-sabotage and not lose that 20 pounds, even though I know it's healthier and I'd like to lose 20 pounds, because I don't want to be a skinny, mean person.
Sounds a lot like it would be a worthwhile exercise to determine which are your limiting beliefs and perhaps which aren't. Is there anything that I don't know, any exercise you can recommend about how you could determine whether you have limiting beliefs on a particular topic?
Yeah. So I think most people can, in their gut, can figure it out pretty quickly. It's like, what are those patterns that you repeat or you say to yourself that you're putting yourself down typically? And they're usually sort of these like all or nothing statements where it's, oh, I'm never going to ... something like that, right? Where we make it like an extreme. I don't know if this is the actual word, but I like to use it, catastrophize, where we just like catastrophize this thing and we're like, oh, this is the worst or whatever. But and the reality is it's probably not. But things like that, those patterns that we have in our head. And one of the questions that I ask for exercise wise is, who do I fear that I might be? And so, oh, I might not be this. I might not be that. I might be this, whatever. I might be like my dad was. I might not be living up to my full potential. And when you kind of can start going down that path, then you can usually pick some things out. And then that's the starting point. And then the work from there is like the work. My favorite part of the work that I do with my clients is like, okay, now what are we going to do with that? And taking that and transforming it into not only having limiting beliefs be changed, but transform into new empowering beliefs that are going to serve you, are going to allow you to create possibility, are going to take sort of the box away so that you can go, live fully and not feel like you're stuck in this little area.
So using that example, if someone were to fear that they might become their dad or something, they're not taking a particular action just in case that might happen. Is that what you mean?
Mm-hmm. Or they are taking particular actions. It could go either way.
I'm pretty sure, based on the information you have on this topic, you've had to work through some of those limiting beliefs yourself. What's an example of one that you've worked through, and how do you do it?
Yeah, I think just going back to starting this business again, and like starting again, and thinking for a while, not only did I not know what could do, but you have those like, am I actually cut out to be an entrepreneur? Am I able to do this thing? And so I think working through that, and honestly, my education and knowledge on how to do this now is like light years higher than when I was like trying to go through it myself. Because like I said, you're right in your observations. I have not had a lot of that in my life. It's been like I've always felt supported. I've always felt like I could do whatever I want. But I guess maybe the limiting beliefs is like, well, can you actually create a business again? But that's even better than your first one, where you get paid really well, where you get to help people, where you get to have plenty of time to travel and work remotely. And so for me, the way that I've worked through limiting beliefs is through action. And I think that's a big piece of changing any sort of belief, is because it's tied to identity. And if you see yourself in a certain way, then you'll take certain actions. And in doing so, that will help change your beliefs. And so if I see myself as just an employee, then it's going to be really hard for me to ever take the actions that I need to become an entrepreneur. But if I see myself as an entrepreneur who's done it before, who can do it again, okay, now what actions would I take? Okay, well, I would start doing this. I would spend all my time like talking to people and educating myself and hiring my own coaches and, learning what I need to learn to be that person. Well, then you start cultivating all these new beliefs through that action, because you have this identity that you hold on to. And I think it's really easy for me to correlate that to fitness, because that's the world that I was in for so long. And also because I was the person who had to lead by example, right? There was never like oh, I don't feel like doing a workout today, I'm not going to do it. No, like you run the gym, you're doing it. Like you don't get that option. But having that identity cultivated in you, it just becomes like the way it is. And it's like how you are. And so I really love this, because I think that we don't know the power, but we can create and destroy identities. And then that is really where a lot of the belief work can happen in there. Because like I said, if you don't see yourself as a healthy, fit person, you're gonna always fall off the bandwagon. You're gonna always not eat healthy. You're gonna always skip. And I'm not even talking about like any sort of extreme, just like going for the walk in the sunshine because it's good for you. You're gonna skip it because you don't see yourself as a healthy person. But if you see yourself as a healthy person, it's like, oh yeah, of course. Of course I had a salad today. Why wouldn't I have a salad today for lunch? Oh yeah, of course I went for a walk. Like that's just part of who I am. So I think there's a huge amount of power in that identity. And so I've had that identity of being an entrepreneur and then kind of losing it and then bringing it back in. And through action, that's how we create that, make that happen.
Your answer around overcoming limiting beliefs through taking action reminds me of a quote. The quote is to test your assumptions. So, you might have limiting beliefs about something, but until you actually go and test it, you might be right, you might be wrong. So, but at least you're taking the action, right? So great answer. Just made me think of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we're getting towards the end of our conversation. So I'm going to ask you a really, really simple question that you'll be able to answer it no problem in a very short period of time. Sarcasm, okay, if you're not aware. How does one live a fulfilling life?
Life happens. We interpret that, and then we experience that interpretation. So if we can like really understand that, like, okay, life is happening, I'm interpreting that interpretation right there is up to us. We get to decide what that interpretation was. And then we experience that. And so if we can understand the power of that right there, I think that's the number one key to actually experiencing a fulfilling life. And I don't think that it's like you ever get there. There's like, it's a continual process, and like this whole idea that I love behind like self-mastery. It's a continual process. You're never going to get there, but that's what makes the fulfillment, is the striving. But this is where entrepreneurs fall into a trap a lot is the striving only without the recognition of the here and the now and being grateful for what you have created and where you're at. And it's being able to hold both of those things at the same time. Because if you're constantly looking to the future and what's next and trying to get to that next thing, then you're gonna have really low levels of fulfillment because that bar is gonna keep moving. Like it doesn't matter what it is. Like, oh, if I make 100K, okay. Oh, now if I make $1 million, oh, now if I like, it's just gonna keep going up and up and up. So it's training yourself how to hold both of those things in dichotomy of like, I can be driven and fulfilled at the same time.
Great answer. And also a nice segue. So, David, what's next for you?
What's next for me? Let's see. So I am continuing to work on, growing my business, building my business. Got some new fun things in the works, and I am training to run my first 50-mile run, which I've never done before, and thought, well, now's the time. I'm almost 40. My body's still holding up great, so let's do it. So working on that and just continuing to, experience, really just enjoy life and give my kids like cool experiences and travel a lot. We've done a lot of traveling the past few years, and being able to work remotely on the road, continue to grow my business is like something that I really wanted to create. And so excited to continue doing that. And I have been writing a few more songs too, just enjoying it, having fun, no pressure. There's no purpose to it other than it's just fun and I really love it. And so planning to record a couple more of those later this year, probably in the fall, and release those.
It's actually a good reminder for me, because I was going to say, is there anywhere people can listen to the album that you created? That's firstly. And secondly, if people want to coach, where do they find you?
Cool. Yes. So it's on all streaming platforms. And so the band name, if you will, is The Forgotten Art. So you can find it on Spotify or Apple Music or whatever. So that album that I wrote was a few years ago. I released a single since then too, which came out last year, I think. And then as far as coaching goes, my company is Unbroken Pursuit. So it's unbrokenpursuit.com. And if you're interested in chatting with me, feel free. You can fill out there's just a quick application on there, or you can email me to david@unbrokenpursuit.com.
Thank you for that. And your answers have been great today. Have you got any closing thoughts for us?
What could be possible for you? What makes you feel fully alive? And just what would you love to create? Like those questions, the power of the questions that we ask ourselves are directly related to the quality of the life that we can create for ourselves. So what questions are you asking yourself?
David Weaver, thank you for being a great guest today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.